yeah, what else do we see in here, Excondrel, that that has been picked already that might be missing in game 3?
Difficult to say. Like I think having a look at the ones that have already picked, we haven't seen any Kai'Sa. So yeah, obviously Kai'Sa, the one that's now being hovered over by Liyab. That's a really high tier pick. Brawl, interestingly, I think we saw it once, but again, haven't seen it from Liyab as of yet. There is Shyvana. There is Lee Sin. We've only seen a little bit of Lee Sin. Twisted Fate, who just recently been buffed, I think he's worth considering. Obviously, we have seen a little bit of Aurelion Sol. Orianna we've seen played once, so I would have expected to have seen more Orianna being considered. So there's still plenty of power picks left available, and I think with if I were Liyab, I think Aurelion Sol or Orianna would be the play for me, because I think comboing that with the Wukong and the Lulu is pretty nice. But it's a blind pick Darius that they're throwing into the game.
Yes, for sure. We can see that Camille Ban, by the way, coming from Liyab Esports. I think they just want to also remove that initiate potential away from 16-bit gear. But since they got a Jarvan in their composition so far, the answer will be, okay, you're going to be taking out Camille, then we've got someone we can also go for an initiate. You know, they got an Alistar as well as the Jarvan. And maybe that will be also the Jade going for some really good free hits from the backline to what more. There's also a Yasuo who can just, you know, annoy the hell out of the members coming up from Liyab Esports. But yeah, what do you say about that?
Yasuo, Jarvan, Yasuo, Alistar, like insane combos. Why I'm liking the 16-bit composition. This is if they lock these in, which would be obviously. You're asking it's a big skill test for your top laner or your Baron laner to play Yasuo into Darius, clearly. But I think, I think this is an insane team fight composition coming out from 16-bit. Like, this is the Wombo combo central. We actually traditionally on PC League used to call the Jarvan Orianna combo the Death Bowl, because essentially you throw the Jarvan ultimate down and you just shockwave on top of Jarvan wherever that cataclysm lands, and essentially it's just a huge amount of damage that you throw down onto the team fight. So you've got the Death Bowl combo, but on top of that, either with the shockwave or the Alistar combo, you then just add Yasuo on top of that. It's absolutely disgusting. So the pure Wombo combo from 16-bit is looking pretty spicy, if you ask me. And now I'm waiting to see what I think the Orianna deny from they've already picked Orianna. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, I've seen that on the pick man. I think Aurelion Sol is maybe the play. You could even play Corki mid here if you wanted to, but I'm actually liking the 16-bit roster, and I think the Twisted Fate pickup is really sensible. Like, you want to impact the side lanes, and you don't want to get stuck into a pure 5v5. I think outright with this composition, you lose 5v5s. Like, unless you get ahead here, Kasaya, as Liyab, you lose 5v5s. But one pick from the mid lane that can help accelerate your side lanes is the Twisted Fate.
Yes, for sure. I'm liking the team fight potential coming from 16-bit gear. Seems like their composition can be executed much easier compared to what Liyab Esports has. For Liyab Esports, you gotta think about, okay, what is their plan in mind in here? Are they gonna go for that initiate that might come up from that Twisted Fate? Again, it is a single target stun that might be coming out from this guy. But other than that, what else is in there? They have to make sure that they're going to be targeting the proper champion from the side of 16-bit gear. But the problem in here is that it's kind of scary. Like, if you try to go for a target on maybe even the Yasuo or maybe even that Orianna, you maybe will be able to expect an immediate backup, especially that looks like they really want to find that team fight setting to happen. Again, you mentioned the combo potential that they got, and the airborne are so much present in here. Airborne coming from the Alistar as well as the Orianna, and that's what Yasuo is looking for. But not to discount the composition of Liyab Esports late game Twisted Fate. I have seen him so far, right after the update. Man, the stun is, I think that was like 0.5 seconds long? But yeah, the stuns is much longer, and at the same time, the damage output is there as well. So let's see how this will work.
Yeah, it's a 0.25 seconds longer, the stun, I believe, in the late game. It's It's absolutely crazy. It's a very, very, very insane late game pick. But as I said, like pure team fights, yeah, okay, you've got the Wukong Lulu combo, but that's all you've got going for you in team fights compared to the big Wombo combo that 16-bit are bringing to the table. So I would expect them to try and snowball their lanes so much so that they might be strong enough to actually just face team fights without caring about that Wombo combo. And that's where the Twisted Fate comes into play. And even when you get to late game, you've got late game Orianna and late game Yasuo. So, you know, obviously Kai'Sa and Twisted Fate do scale well, as you correctly mentioned. It still might not be enough, though. If they don't get far enough ahead from the laning phase, it might not be enough because both Orianna and Yasuo scale very well also.
You know how important the early game in here as well. So, I mean, if you get the early game and it just basically able to capitalize your early game advantage, it's something that I usually would find in different mobile games. That okay, just so you do good in early game, maybe first 5 or 8 minutes of the game, and then you're gonna be having a good time at the later stages of the game, provided that you don't choke out. So I think if Liyab Esports is able to do that, like just like what they did from game 1, where the first blood was on their hands and they even managed to get an early position in the objectives, then maybe they can stop the potential that 16-bit gear has in their composition. Because I mean, to be honest, this is also looking scary. What they got in damage output as well, come here from Jin in the late game is so scary, even at Orianna too. So we'll see about that. So I think Liyab Esports needs to do a good job in the early stages of the game before, you know, you give that power spike that is present in 16.
We'll see. As we head through, you can see we're into Champions Select now. We're waiting for the teams to get onto the Rift. And again, we've kind of touched heavily on how these compositions work, but also I'm excited to see Jarvan heading back to pro play. Like, he got a couple of buffs on the last patch. I've seen him quite a lot in high elo European solo queue. I've seen a decent amount of Jarvan being played. So, you know, I think he's definitely been, the balance team did a good job of just trying to make, you know, just nudging him into viability. And it's especially the width range on his Dragon Strike that allows him to go for the knock-up more consistently is, I think, what's really keeping him, or putting him back into the meta nicely. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how this play out. Obviously, the thing that I am a little worried about is I think the linchpin of this 16-bit composition relies on the Yasuo not getting steamrolled by a Darius. So that's where I'm going to be keeping my eyes. I want to make sure that this Yasuo doesn't get absolutely stomped. And if he doesn't, then obviously he can still remain relatively relevant in these team fight situations. This is going to be an interesting one, though. This is the last game. The winner will move on to our third game of the day, I believe. And the loser will take away 10,000 wild cores. But unfortunately, they will exit the competition.
Sure, but yeah, you mentioned about that solo lane matchup between the Darius as well as the Yasuo, but I want to also take a look at the matchup in the dual lane. So we got a Jin and a Kai'Sa. For sure, both of them can pretty much go for that real good fast clear. But if we talk about the support, the Alistar might be having quite just a little bit of hard time dealing with the poke coming up from that Lulu. So we also take a look about how they're going to be handling that one. But I think given the fact that maybe the poke might be giving that hard time against Tongs, Alistar, hopefully this is where Jarvan might be going for a rotation as well. Maybe just to stop the Kai'Sa from a snowball and even the Lulu.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's interesting about the Alistar Lulu matchup is that actually it's not as bad for Alistar as one might think. Like, I think Lulu traditionally most people think is a good matchup into Alistar, and it is for the most part if the Lulu plays aggressive enough and you know utilizes her timing. Wow, this is aggressive from Ray. They are pushing the Orianna in and zoning her away to give Twisted Fate the advantage in this side lane right now. I'm guessing they really want to put pressure on Orianna early on. Like, they've just forced her to flash as well. Bloody hell.
Yeah, I mean, for as long as the gold card is ready, the stun will be there. Look at that. That is also giving a Gambit quite a position into just owning the farm on the top side. But for the meantime, they're done with just bullying the Orianna in the mid. That was a good attempt. Trying to go for some plays in the middle lane, taking down the Orianna early on. Even if you were able to do it or not, was something still commendable, I would rather say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They very much put pressure on the Orianna early on, and obviously she has got a very strong early laning phase. Unfortunately, that really only materialized in burning her flash, but if they can maybe make a return to that lane and put pressure on her again, and then the gold card engage, it might be good enough to again find the kill. We were talking a little bit about the Alistair Lulu matchup. With the Alistair Lulu matchup, for Alistair, it's all about picking your moment to engage. It's all about picking the best time to look for the headbutt pulverize combo. That best time is usually once you've seen the polymorph used, right? So you've seen that whimsy used effectively. You've got to be a bit careful here. Darius is making rotate, as is the Yasuo. That's a very low Wukong.
Yes, for sure. We did see that attempt coming up from the side of 16-bit gear, instilling that scuttler down bottom part of the map. We did see it a while ago. TP on the Jarvan attempted to go for an engage onto Rubik's, but apparently, hey, that was a twisted fate we're talking about with a gold card already. So we're just gonna get stunned, gonna get slowed if the red card is there as well. So. But yeah, no one died, fortunately, though, from the side of 16-bit gear. But yeah, that was quite a risky play. I mean, it feels like so far for this game 3, teams are willing to take quite a bit of risk.
Yeah, I mean they're looking to, especially the early game. I mean, Jarvan has a better early game than Wukong, right? So that's what he was looking to abuse. He's got better CC, he's tankier in general, got a slightly better damage or more consistent application of the damage as well. So I mean, they were just looking to abuse that early game advantage that Jarvan does have versus the Wukong. I really love how they really put pressure on this Orianna. You know, like that was a very sensible early game decision. But alas, the flash will be coming up relatively soon, and so really only served to deny her a couple of minions overall. And actually, I'm impressed 16-bit have managed to keep themselves in the game here. Apologies if you can hear my son; he's just woken up, so he's taking him to nursery
to the other end of the world. Yeah, for the meantime, again, during the drafting phase, we were talking about how quite difficult to pull off the composition of Liyab Esports compared to what 16-bit gear has. So they have to be very careful about who they want to pick up. Like for example, the Orianna, they have been trying to pick him off early on onto the game, but just that did not happen. That was a good attempt. But for the meantime, in here looks like a swap will be happening once more. Oh, wait, I'm getting confused.
Wait, Liyab going for the tower dive. They're not going to commit to the dragon. They're the ones they're the ones making the cross map play right here.
Yes, in here 16-bit gear is already well positioned onto the dragon. Actually, what a difference. I mean, they have exchanged strategies. A while ago, it was 6-bit gear going for that tier 1 turret take, and this time it is 16-bit gear going for that early dragon take. So that was quite interesting. I mean, an exchange of strategy, but not but for the meantime,
not executed. Yeah, not executed massively well from Liyab, though, because you can see they kept that tower alive. Yasuo cleared the wave and kept himself healthy as well. So this is a big win for 16-bit. They now have first foot forward in this game. And they really are in the driving seat. And again, remember, this is a wombo combo that scales well as a team fight into the late game. And they have not been threatened a huge amount in the early game. They have not snowballed with that twisted fate. And that is something that we need to keep our eyes on. So my son is in the room with me. He wants to cast some Wild Rift.
Yes,
with
most
too,
likely he will anytime soon. But for the meantime, so far we can see an 1k gold advantage in favor of 16-bit gear, primarily because of that dragon take that they took a while ago. And however, Liyab Esports, despite sending 3 to 4 members up top to take down the tier 1 turret in there, they failed to do so. I mean,
yes.
They could have, I don't know, I wasn't really focused on that one, but really good defensive play come from the Yasuo, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I've been super impressed with the 16-bit top player. I think he has been one of the shining lights of this roster, and I think he's looked to really carry them from that Fiora performance, and his Yasuo performance is looking really clean as well. And I'm just going to mention to my son that he should definitely not be screaming down the microphone. So, Kasaya, while we have this Rift Herald fight, I'm just going to briefly let you handle it.
Yes, I'm gonna be taking over. No worries. In here, we can see 16-bit gear already going for the early position onto that Rift Herald. I'm not too sure if there will be any chances for the side of Liyab Esports to go for that contempt, but for the meantime, everyone's just fully on committing Destiny available coming up from the Twisted Fate as well. But unfortunately, looks like the damage not enough. As we can see, really good HP bars still present on the side of 16-bit gear. Curtain Call is present. Let's see in here, damage already going towards Gambit as well as Morita Boy flanking on the side. Though it's Rubik's, but it's kind of failed on taking down a member on the side of 16-bit gear. And this is, a massive snowball now for the side of 16-bit gear.
Yeah, this is a disaster for Liyab, and you could just see that they just can't function in team fights well at all compared to the way that 16-bit can. That was a really nice, just kind of like microing of HP bars, ultimate to just zone away the AD carry and support. You know, Darius went for the flank play here. I kind of get it, but once Twisted Fate was dead, you needed to back out. There's no way you could commit, and Darius just walks in, maybe looking to look for like the slam dunk chain, but the CC's too strong. And at this point, I'm struggling to see how Liyab make a competitive way or find their way back into this game in a competitive setting, because they're 4,000 gold behind now. That might not seem like a lot, but these things snowball like crazy in Wild Rift. And I really think that a team like 16-bit, they even scale incredibly well too. It's not going to be easy for them to get back into the game. Although
Oriana is actually in a bad spot right now. Gonna get tower dive by the members of Liyab Esports. Liyab Esports also might be taking down a turret for themselves, giving them quite a good position, even taking the next objective potentially. But look at what 16-bit is actually doing in the middle lane as well as in the top lane, just proccing the abilities coming from Nixu. Now, really good position up top as well as in the middle lane. But Liyab Esports might still have an answer, as they themselves are also well positioned in here somewhere in the bot. But no, they have to leave it alone because the Rift Herald has been put down in the middle lane. Let's see if they will be able to utilize this one. Still quite a healthy turret in the middle lane though. Oh,
yeah,
they weren't able to.
It wasn't the most effective. It wasn't the most effective use. Like, I really feel like that they are strong enough to be able to force a fight and then use the Rift Herald, but I guess they were using it as a way to try and distract and set up vision around this dragon, which they were able to do so, and they walk away with the second dragon in the game uncontested. So for 16-bit, they'll be really happy with this outcome. I think they'll all probably just walk away and say, do you know what? We'll get that mid lane turret eventually. We now have a late game scaling teamfight comp that we've just picked up the second dragon in the game with. So, I mean, still massive advantage right now for the 16-bit roster.
Yeah, real nice strategy. I mean, we were thinking about, okay, maybe they should have used that referral a little bit later, but to use that as a distraction for them to be able to take down the dragon as well as the tier 1 turret down bot was much better. So really good snowball still on the side of 16-bit gear. No turrets, just one turret falling down on their end, and it looks like this is, I mean, by the draft, again, this is 16-bit gear with a much easier to execute draft for themselves. Again, up until this point, I'm trying to find what might be the best combination for the champions that is in the composition of Liyab.
Yeah, it's again, like I said, I feel like they've missed their window. Like, I think that they needed to snowball with the Twisted Fate a lot harder than they did. And I feel like that now we're just entering to situations where 5v5 team fights are going to become relatively inevitable because you don't really have a strong split pusher. I know Twisted Fate can, but he's kind of sticking with the team. The 5v5 team fights feel like they're going to become inevitable around the Baron and the sort of the late game Drakes. I feel like you get outscaled in that sense by 16-bit, by Liyab. I think Liyab needed to, I think they needed to use that Twisted Fate and try and impact the side lanes as quickly as possible, but they just haven't been able to do so as of yet. And right now, exactly, it's not happening. And right now, I think 16-bit are just super strong.
Yes, and I think Biggie just got his GA popped out in here by the members of 16-bit gear, and now it looks like they're gonna be going for that bait as well into going for the pretend contest on the dragon side, while the Yasuo is doing also a good job in going for the split push work. But this is a 2v fight ongoing down bottom part of the map right now. The Yasuo will fall down. One member down for the side of 16-bit gear, and that was quite unfortunate. Might this be an a position for the side of Liyab Esports to take advantage while the Yasuo is dead? I mean, that's so far. This is only 20-second death timer on the side. They're gonna go for a reset for the meantime.
The question is, what do you take advantage of? Like, it'd be a bit risky to go for a Baron play straight up. Like, it's a nice kill onto Yasuo, but there isn't really anything effective that you can just go and take off the map. I think the mistake here was from 16-bit's top lane to actually look for the 1v1. Didn't really need to. Like, just keep that side lane pressure up. Don't commit your don't commit into the 1v1 if you don't need to, especially with the Baron up. Like, keep the Darius away from the team fights. I do think that whilst the split pushing tactic from the 16-bit top laner is good, I think that realistically his power in team fights is a lot more effective than when used in the side lane. But I also understand that he's in a really strong 1v1 position. He's got a 2,000 gold lead on the Darius just through CS and turrets alone. But it does look like he's now starting to work towards grouping up in that mid lane around the Baron pit. Maybe we see a 5v5 fight open up here. The problem is, as you can see, when these mid lane tier 1s are up, it's really difficult to search for team fights because those mid lane tier 1s dominate the pressure in the middle of the map. They make it very difficult to get into the enemy jungle relatively scot-free. It looks like the first one's going down though, so this is good.
Yes, this is good for 16-bit gear. Them getting that position in the middle lane, and even for the next dragon that is about to come up, that is the Ocean Drake. That will definitely help them out in terms of team fights. Destiny has already been pop up by that Twisted Fate, and look at that, they're just gonna be going for the dive and onto the team fight. Again, the composition of Team 16-bit gear is just well committed.
It's just too good.
Oh man, this is looking bad for Liyab Esports.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it is bad. This game's over. Like, Kasai, this game's been over for a while. Like, you just saw in that team fight, like, they can't do anything versus what 16-bit have got. Like, the 16-bit have just drafted a wombo combo, huge team fight composition, and no one from Liyab has got anything to deal with this. Like, the Orianna Jarvan combo is tried and tested since the dawn of time in League of Legends, even on the PC version. It's as old as the Malphite Orianna combo. And then obviously you bring Yasuo into the mix. Like, you just saw them rip that team fight apart. And Liyab, they weren't even competitive. Like, it wasn't even a competitive team fight. They just got absolutely slapped. It was so easy for 16-bit to execute on that because just compositionally they outclass Liyab right now.
Until now, we are not seeing that split push hopefully being done by the Twisted. Now it's gonna be a lot harder because they already lost the turret in the mid, as well as they just allowed Team 16-bit gear to snowball once more. They got a Baron buff as well that just gonna be amplifying all of the minion waves flowing towards the ball. Look at that massive amount of buffed minion waves down bot. I think this turret's gonna go down anytime soon. Curtain call has been popped out. Oh, look at that. Did someone die? No, that was a JA just being popped up away, I think, from Miggy. Now Nixu is done. There are one member down in here. Side of Liyab Esports, Jarvan with the ultimate as well. Everyone's just going all in, and this is again the fight that 16-bit gear is looking for. Just gonna go focus fire onto the Nexus, and this is gonna be it. Team 16-bit gear is gonna be moving forward in the round 2 lower bracket. Wow.
Yeah, and given the performance from 16-bit this week in their first game, it's a revival for them because they really looked out of sorts in the previous engagement they had going up against Omega. Omega really kind of tore them apart in that game, but 16-bit have bounced back. And again, like, you can't compete if you're Liyab in this composition. Like, you just don't function in a team fight. Like, you have to play the side lanes if you're Liyab here. But the Twisted Fate, I didn't see him use his ultimate in the laning phase once. Like, he really needed to use it, get into a side lane, look to gank, like snowball the Darius, snowball the Kai'Sa, make it hard for for 16-bit to just come in here and slap these team fights. And 16-bit just got dragons uncontested. They got the Rift Herald uncontested. By the time that the contests actually came through, their team fight was too strong. They were at too many item spikes, and it was impossible for Liyab to actually compete. This, for me, was just one of those skill tests when it comes to all-round ban pick that honestly 16-bit passed, and I think Liyab unfortunately just missed the mark on.
Yeah, and we can even call this a dominant game in favor of 16-bit gear. Look at the gold graph. It's just majority of that one is just color blue. I mean, so it is them just snowballing from the start up until the end. We see a little bit of spikes coming from Liyab Esports, but there was really nothing. I mean, I think that what Liyab Esports failed to do so was to capitalize on what the Twisted Fate can do. I mean, that was the destiny that can just go for really good plays, go for the pressure on the other side of the map, just like what 16-bit gear did in round 2.